Yeah, it's that's sort of the essence of it. And what comes to mind with the barnacle metaphor is the glue that keeps the barnacles attached or gives them a place to attach is the mind's constant attention to itself, if you would, as opposed to the sense of presence that it ultimately is and reflects, if you would.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly what I was trying to go for. But you said it a lot simpler and clearer. Yes, it's we're either very concerned with ourselves and we're just kind of locked up in this little identity thing that isn't who we are anyway. But all that is just concentrated on this small point in this vast, infinite all of who we really are. And who we really are is not that at all. And who we really are is something unbound and free and joyful and still unique and still specially different from the other guy, but in a completely new way. I mean, that's the child. It always comes back to that. It's like the child has its own way with each person of expressing and being, but it has nothing to do with that confined small identity, that limited identity that keeps saying, it just keeps piling all this misery on itself, you know? Oh, this happened to me, and I can't this, and I don't that. And these are all false claims. And breaking through that and seeing your real self, those false claims just fall away. You don't have to go through them one by one, or, you know, sit in the psychologist's, you know, office and try to break through each one. It's like you just recognize that you have piled on all these false concepts onto an infinite beauty that you really are. And to start with your infinite beauty, they just fall off. If you just start with this divine presence, being all that you are, going back to this, starting with awareness. So who are you? I am the infinite awareness that is being all that is, and every view and every aspect and every idea, everybody's thoughts and ideas are all within this infinite all, but none of those ideas are who you are. So
the barnacle thing again, sort of having it drop off of itself because you're no longer attached to it. We may have done this before, but this is a good place for it because it's a different metaphor for the same thing. Where if you take the pot's your body, the water in the pot is the reflective mechanism or your mind. The sun is the child or Christ in you or the mighty I am presence or awareness, whatever you want to call it, but the sun has an individual particular ray that strikes the water in your mental pot, so to speak. Now, if that mirror is moving, self-referencing, it shatters the image of the sun that would otherwise be perfect and clear. It's like a sunset on the ocean. Looks like the sun's broken into a 1,000 shards of light, which is a great Japanese haiku, that the sun is shattered, that idea. Well, the mind, from its level, would want to put all the pieces back together again, would want to put Humpty Dumpty together again. But it's Humpty Dumpty, the image isn't actually broken. It only appears to be broken because of the disturbed, turbulent mind. When the mind stills, the perfect image becomes self-apparent and self-aware, and it's basically back to be still and know that I am God, that image of the sun. And then, of course, the metaphysical question is that image the sun? Of course it's not. No more than a wave is the whole ocean, but it is of the same substance. It is one with the sun by virtue of being light, in which case the shadows drop because you're aware of being the light.
Yeah, that's it. know that I am God. Exactly. And that's where, if you begin with the truth that there is only one, and it is all that is, and it is God's living presence, then you can stay with this. And in the purity of this truth, then, as you say, it's like you understand you don't have to put all these pieces back to make a whole. The totality of yourself isn't in the pieces. It isn't in the images. It's in the living presence that you are. Yeah, if you stay with that, and if you always go back to it when you get befuddled or confused or distraught or caught up in somebody else's confusion, or if you just go back to, and for me it was as simple as, although it took a long time, but the basic premise was to always go back to, and for me it was as simple and clear as seeing God is all. God is all that is. God is all in all. God is all in. There's nothing else but that. And everything is made of that, so that there's only one. And if you go back to that every time you get kind of lost, it really does bring a clarity and a peace, an abiding peace. And then it's almost like with time, with your own sort of taking yourself there all the time and plunking yourself in the light all the time and living it as much as you can, it starts to become I can't even explain it. That's where I start getting into. That's why I always say I can't really teach it. It's just sort of an essence that you have to.
Well, it's the word for it, and the word doesn't capture it, but you start to identify with it as you, and it becomes your central reference, and you can't even say central reference because it becomes the reference that's both center and circumference at the same time.
Yeah.
That's
How
does
it happen? I don't know, but that's also the joy of the joy of this childlikeness is like it doesn't matter how it happens. It's like, wow, this is amazing, how beautiful, and yet you so do want to share it and say, look, you guys, we can all be, riding our little tricycles down the sidewalks. Let's go, But I don't know quite how to do that, but I think maybe just the love will get it out there and get it through. So, and I keep going also back to I think there's so many people who understand this at this point and are sharing it in their way and out of their own heart and their own words and their own way of doing it. So I really think the shift is going on. We are waking up to our true identity. And boy, when we do that, that will solve all the problems. We won't need government and agencies and mandates and bills and laws, and we will live this pure from the heart, and that's where we're really going. So that gets me really happy to know that's coming through somehow.
Again, knowing the operative principle is certainly not necessary to be it. It only helps to be able to share it, I guess. But what comes to mind as far as when you not only you use the reminder God is all, God is whole, God is perfect, God is one, etc., as a little mental trigger that essentially recalls that state of presence, and that settles the mind, and when the mind settles, it becomes peaceful and quiet, and the image is there. So it's mutually reinforcing, basically. You're only using the concept or the pointer, God is all, as a trigger that allows you to remember the still state, the silence and peace and happiness and joy, all of that. Sort of we get lost in the world for a moment, and if we're conscious enough to remember, it's like the prodigal, when he remembers he's the father's son, in that moment he's turned around and moving back. It's when there has been a local self-forgetting, if you would, because ultimately there's a self-ignorance and a self-forgetting that's going on here. But ultimately the optimum principle is when the mind stills, the clarity comes, or the clarity is what's left when the mind is still.
Yes, and for me, whenever I would remind myself God is all, and I could just say it as simple as that, I would see the vastness and totality of, well, you can never not be that. You can't get outside of it. It's all. It's infinite. It's unbound. It's everything. How can anyone or anything be outside of that? And in seeing, it's like, and that's sort of like what we were going to talk about, but we kind of got sidetracked, but it's seeing with that inner eye and that inner state of mind. You get the whole picture, and you go, and what happened, or at least for what happens for me when I come back to just that simple statement, it isn't a concept. I can actually, what happens is I rest in it. I feel, oh, okay. So you kind of let go. You go, okay, God is all. I don't have to do anything. It's like you let go. You completely let go and rest. It's like a, yes, stillness. It's a calm. It's a peace. It takes all the worry away. I mean, if God is all, what do I have to worry about? I mean, you just can't. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's like completely, for me, it was like a sinking into a completely, rather than what would you call it? Like a tight, a tight trying to protect. It was a complete relaxing into this, and it's like trust. Is trust a word? Yes, I guess that it was like but it was more than that, because it was, trust reminds me of you're a little bit afraid, but it was such a, oh, thank God, okay, God is all. And I would just, it was like, okay, I can let go. I let go in that. And that was, and it proves itself immediately. It's like, oh, I can let go, and it's fine. This is wonderful. I'm here. It sort of reminds me of, as I speak of it, I'm sort of thinking of floating in a wonderful ocean, and you're laying on your back and you just float. I mean, it's like an amazing thing to just be floating on the water and just resting on the water. What an amazing feeling that is. I mean, I think of that. I just used to love to do that out in the ocean. I'd just flop myself right on top of the water, and you just float there, and you feel like you could float for days. It's just like, wow, that's kind of it. It's like that kind of trust, or just letting go and dropping into it, and it just takes you, it holds you, it's here, it doesn't go away. Presence doesn't leave, awareness doesn't leave, God doesn't leave, God doesn't go anywhere. It becomes even more evident, it becomes more obvious that this is, yeah, it is here. Wow. No matter how much I think or where I wander off to or where my mind goes, or it's right here. And that, to me, wow, that became, then that kind of shifted into that became or is now all the time. And there's no reminder. It's like it's so obvious. It's like, what else is there?